I always believed that life is not just a path from birth to death. It is a theater where every day we step onto the stage, even if we are unprepared, even if the script has not yet been written. And the audience is merciless here. They don't applaud those who step out and remain silent, they applaud those who dare to reveal themselves, who risk speaking loudly, even while trembling with fear. But how many of us remain in the shadows, pretending that we are not yet ready? How many hide behind the illusion that one day everything will resolve itself, will fix itself, will arrive on its own? I was one of them, too. Until I realized at some point, the biggest lie I had ever heard was that, there is time. There is no time. There is only today. And there is only you. I felt this truth deeply one evening, when I caught myself thinking, I am not living my own life. I am taking steps, but they lead me somewhere my heart does not burn. I see my dreams, but they lie behind glass, unreachable, because I built that glass myself from fear, excuses, and laziness. I asked myself, what will remain after me? Just footprints in the dust of ordinary days? Or something that might inspire others? And then I remembered the warriors of different cultures. In Japan, Bushido, the samurai code. A man there was considered already dead the moment he chose to serve honor. That gave him strength to live boldly, because the fear of death disappeared. In Sparta, boys were raised to stare pain in the face. There was no word later, only now. The Stoics, Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, spoke a simple yet harsh truth: we cannot control events, we control only ourselves. These cultures differ, but they share one essence: the understanding that a person forges their destiny here and now. I began telling myself, if I don't rise now, I will remain a slave to my excuses forever. You know, the story of the Japanese warrior Miyamoto Musashi always struck me the most. He won over 60 duels, yet his greatest victory was not over enemies, but over himself. He chose the path of solitude, trained in the mountains, studied not only the sword but also calligraphy, painting, philosophy. For a warrior who does not grow inwardly becomes nothing more than a blunt weapon. His words in the Book of 5 Rings echoed within me: the one who has conquered himself has conquered the world. I understood, I have no right to wait. I've always been inspired by examples of people who broke boundaries. Nelson Mandela, for instance, 27 years in prison, and when released, he did not break, did not become a slave of hatred. He chose the path of strength and wisdom. Or Muhammad Ali, who said, I hated every minute of training, but I told myself, don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. And I asked myself, am I any worse? Are my excuses justified? Because it's hard? Because others don't believe? Because I am tired? All these reasons are worth nothing. In Rome, warriors rose at dawn and prepared for battle, even if they didn't know whether they'd live to see the evening. In Tibetan monasteries, monks sat for hours in meditation, taming the mind, because they believed, the true battle is the battle with the chaos inside. And I realized, my greatest battle still lies ahead. I began to see my life as training. Every refusal of temptation was a sword strike against weakness. Every step forward, even a small one, was a brick in my fortress. But do you know what the hardest part is? It's not the training, not the pain, not the doubts. The hardest part is the silence. The very silence when no one sees your efforts. When you work in darkness, and the world stays quiet. Yet it is precisely then that the true warrior is formed. Because success does not come to those who wait for applause, but to those who are ready to wait. I went through this, and then I remembered one story from the Japanese way of tea. A tea master, before his death, gathered his students and said, "My life is a cup of tea. I drank it slowly, savoring every sip. But most importantly, I made this cup with my own hands. And that struck me. I, too, am a creator. My life is my cup. And if I don't begin shaping it with my own hands, it will remain empty. I swore to myself, I will not let fear or laziness steal my story. I always told myself, the greatest enemy of a person is themselves. Not society, not the government, not enemies from outside, but one's own laziness, indifference, and refusal to act. Because I've seen countless times how people lost their chance simply because they didn't take the first step. They waited, for the perfect moment, for the right opportunity, for someone's advice. But the perfect moment is a lie. It never comes. The only day that comes is the one when you decide, enough. I take my life into my own hands. I remember reading about the samurai. They had a principle, Bushido, the way of the warrior. A warrior did not wait. A warrior did not hesitate. He acted. If an enemy stood before him, he raised his sword. If life demanded sacrifice, he made it. And I thought, isn't this what we lack today? We have forgotten how to be warriors in our own lives. We want comfort, guarantees, safety. But does anything of value grow in the comfort zone? Look at the life of Spartacus. A slave, bound in chains, had every reason to surrender. But he chose rebellion. He chose risk. Yes, his uprising was crushed. But he remained a symbol of freedom. His name is known thousands of years later. And how many modern people, sitting in warm apartments, watching series and complaining about life, will vanish without a trace, leaving not even a shadow in memory? I am often asked, but what do you do when you have no strength left? When everything falls apart? I answer, remember the examples of those who walked through hell and did not break. Look at Nelson Mandela. 27 years in prison. 27. Can you imagine how many days, nights, years stolen from freedom, from family, from the world? And yet he did not break. He came out, and not only forgave, he became a leader who united a nation. Do we have the right to complain about little things when there are such examples of strength? I also remember our ancestors. The Cossacks. People who lived on the edge of life and death, freedom and slavery. Their land was an arena of constant wars, raids, betrayals. Yet they chose the path of courage. So many legends tell of dozens of Cossacks holding defense against hundreds of enemies, refusing to retreat, knowing they would not return. And they sang. Imagine, facing death, they sang songs, because they knew, death is not the end, if you lived your life with dignity. You may say, but what does this have to do with me, a modern person, in a city, surrounded by gadgets and offices? And I will answer, all the more so. Because your enemy is more insidious. He is not on the battlefield. He is inside you. He is in your excuses: I'm tired, I don't have time, I'm not ready. And every excuse is another nail in the coffin of your potential. Remember the story of Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the concentration camps. He saw death every day. He saw people turned into shadows. And yet he wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." He realized, even in the harshest conditions, a person has freedom, the freedom to choose their attitude. And that freedom is unbreakable. I ask myself, how do we use this freedom today? We waste hours scrolling social media feeds. We quarrel over nonsense. We postpone our dreams for tomorrow. And tomorrow? Tomorrow may never come. That is the tragedy. People live as if eternity lies ahead. But eternity is an illusion. You have only today. You have only now. When I think about this, I see the image of chess before me. Life is like a game. And the question is not what pieces you are given. Maybe you start with a pawn. Maybe your opponent has a queen and rooks. But the real question is, will you learn to play with the pieces you have? Will you learn to see a few moves ahead? Because true strength lies not in resources, but in strategy. I've seen examples of this in different cultures. The Japanese have the art of kaizen, constant improvement. Small steps, every day. And in the end, they lead to grand results. And in Indian practices there is the principle of tapas, self-discipline, when you train not only the body but also the spirit. You learn not to follow your desires, but to master them. Because freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is having the strength to tell yourself no. Look at the athletes who became legends. Michael Jordan. He was rejected from his high school team. They said, "You're not good enough." But he did not give up. Thousands of hours in the gym, hundreds of losses, and in the end, the most famous name in basketball. It was not talent that decided. It was his persistence. His readiness to rise after every fall. And now be honest, how many times have you fallen? And how many times have you just stayed down, waiting for someone to lift you? But no one will lift you. This is your battle. These are your wounds. These are your victories. I want you to feel one truth: pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. Pain will always be there. You get hurt, it hurts. You are betrayed, it hurts. You lose, it hurts. But whether to suffer or not, that is your choice. Because suffering is when you remain stuck in pain, when you feed it with thoughts. Or you can take that pain and turn it into fuel. That is what all great people did. Look at art. Vincent van Gogh. Poverty, despair, misunderstanding. And yet, was it not from this pain that paintings were born, now worth millions? Look at Beethoven. A deaf composer. Deaf. And he created symphonies that still shake us to the core. Imagine the strength of spirit it takes to hear music not with ears, but with the heart. That is why I say, your story is not yet written. But every day you write it. And if you think your life is a string of failures, know this: it is only a chapter, not the ending. The ending is decided by you. And now I ask, what will you choose? To be a spectator, or the hero of your own story? I've often thought, why do stories about warriors affect us so deeply? Why do we keep returning to them, from ancient myths to modern films about special forces? The answer is simple, because there is a warrior in each of us. Even if we don't acknowledge it. A warrior is not just someone who wields a sword or a gun. A warrior is someone who has the courage to stand against circumstances when it feels like the world is collapsing. Think of the Spartans at Thermopylae. 300 men against an entire army. They knew they would die. Yet their choice gave Greece time. Their death became a symbol. Isn't that the highest purpose of a person, to live a life so that even defeat inspires others? I look at this and think, what about us today? We hide from difficulties, shy away from challenges. Yet the world waits for those who step forward. Perhaps your battle isn't on a battlefield, but in a hospital, at the bedside of a sick child. Perhaps your battle is in a classroom, shaping the next generation. Perhaps your battle is in the quiet of your office, fighting your own weakness, your desire to give up. Yet it is still a battle. And it demands from you the same qualities the Spartans showed: resilience, honor, self-sacrifice. When I say this, I see the image of Hercules before me. He faced 12 labors. And each task seemed impossible: slay the Nemean lion, clean the Augean stables, tame Cerberus. Impossible. Yet he did it. Step by step, pain by pain. And in the end, he became immortal. It is a myth, but myths do not arise from nothing. They reflect truths relevant to every generation. Your lion is your fear. Your stables are the chaos in your life that you are afraid to confront. Your Cerberus is the dark thoughts that keep you chained. But if Hercules succeeded, why do you think you cannot? Look to the East, the Zen tradition. Monks sat in meditation for years to tame the mind. Because the greatest enemy is not other people, but the chaos within. And when you master it, when you become calm in the midst of the storm, you become invincible. Now remember examples from military history. World War II. London, bombings. The city burns, people spend nights in shelters. And then Winston Churchill steps forward, a small old man with a cigar, and says, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the streets, we shall never surrender." His words became a wall that stopped the tide. And I realize, words can be as powerful a weapon as a bullet. Because they awaken the spirit. It seems to me that the greatest deficit of our time is not money, not resources, but heroes. People who say, "I take responsibility." Imagine if everyone took even one decisive action instead of 100 complaints. If instead of whining, we built. If instead of envy, we inspired. Wouldn't the world change in a single generation? I know you might say, easy to say. But what if it doesn't work? So what? Failure is not the end. It is another step. Remember Edison. Thousands of attempts to create the light bulb. People asked him, "Aren't you ashamed that you failed so many times?" He answered, "I haven't failed. I've found 1,000 ways that don't work. And in the end, light. I think of Socrates. He was given a choice: flee Athens or accept death. He drank the hemlock. Why? Because he said, I will not betray my principles. Imagine the strength of spirit needed to face death with a clear mind and calm heart. Now look at our lives. Are we ready to hold even small principles? Or do we abandon them at the first convenience? In Latin America, there is the legend of Simón Bolívar. He could have lived peacefully, enjoying privileges. But he chose the struggle. He led people in a war of liberation, and his name became synonymous with freedom. I believe every nation, every culture had such people. And that means, there is that spark in each of us. I want you to understand, your life is a chance to leave a mark. You don't need to be Napoleon or Alexander the Great. But isn't it heroic to be an honest parent, raising children with love? Isn't it a feat to stay loyal in a world where betrayal has become the norm? Isn't it a victory to rise every day and fight for what you believe in, even when no one supports you? And here is what matters: history always remembers those who acted. It forgets those who remained silent. Look at biblical stories. David versus Goliath. A boy with a sling against a giant. No one believed in him. Yet he stepped forward. And he won. Because size does not determine the outcome. Faith and determination do. I often think, what if David had been afraid? What if he had stayed in the crowd? We would not know his name. The same is true for you. If you remain in the crowd, history will not remember you. If you step forward, even defeat will shine through the ages. So I say, do not hide. Do not delay. Do not live as a statistic. Live as a hero. Because heroes are not born. Heroes are made by choices. And today, you make the choice of who you will be. I know what you're feeling right now. You're listening and thinking, okay, but how do I start? Where do I begin? I'm not a hero, not a warrior, not a politician, not a prophet. And here lies the truth: heroes never started as heroes. They were ordinary people, just like you. What set them apart was one thing: they took a step when others remained standing still. Look at the Buddha. He was born a prince. He had everything: luxury, pleasure, security. But one day he saw sickness, old age, and death. And he realized, luxury cannot save from suffering. He left the palace, renounced his title, and set out in search of truth. That was his step. He didn't know where he was going, but he went. And his path changed millions of lives. Or Jesus. The carpenter's son, a simple man from Nazareth. And he said, I have come to change hearts. He had no army, no wealth, but he had a word. And that word became the foundation of civilization. Again, one step. Mahatma Gandhi. A small, thin man in simple clothes. Against him, the British Empire. And he said, I will fight without violence. Isn't that madness? Yet his madness changed history. Because he didn't wait for the perfect moment. He simply acted. Here's the essence: you don't have to wait until you feel strong, until confidence appears. Strength comes in the process. Confidence is born from action. Remember the Japanese concept of ikigai. It is the meaning of life, the reason to get up every morning. For some, it is family. For others, art. For others, service to others. If you find your ikigai, you will grow wings. Because when a person knows what they live for, they can endure any hardship. I remember the story of a Tibetan monk. He endured years of torture, prison, abuse. When asked, what was the hardest part, he replied, the hardest part was not losing compassion for those who tortured me. Think about that strength. It is not just courage. It is greatness of spirit. Now look at the modern world. Steve Jobs. He was fired from the company he founded. For some, that would have been the end. But he said, being fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. He came back and created products that changed our lives. Again, pain transformed into strength. I have another image, a mountain. A person can reach the summit only by taking steps upward, even when it's hard to breathe, even when the legs refuse to move. And you know what? At the top, it's always lonely. Few reach it. But it is there that the view opens, unavailable to those who stayed below. So tell me, are you ready to climb? Or will you stay below, complaining about those who go up? I like the Stoics' principle, amor fati, love of fate. They said, not just accept everything that happens to you, but love it. Because every event is part of a path that makes you stronger. Epictetus was a slave. Seneca lived under tyranny. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire during wars and plague. And all of them said, life is hard. But it is beautiful precisely because it gives us a chance to show courage. I want you to feel this breath of eternity. Because every day is an opportunity to write a line in the book of life. The question is, will it be a line of indifference, or a line of strength? Think of your children. They watch you. They copy you. And one day they will say, my father, or mother, was an example. Or they will say, he lived, but left nothing behind. What legacy will you leave? Think of time. Imagine you are on your deathbed. What will you feel? Pride that you dared to live? Or regret that you spent life on fears and excuses? This is the point. Because death is the best teacher. It reminds you, you don't have eternity. You have only this day. And that is why I say, act. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Today. Start small. Write a plan. Take one step. Take another. And another. Because great peaks are conquered with small steps. And remember, heroes are not born. Heroes are created by actions. So rise. Look in the mirror. Say to yourself, I am no longer a victim. I am a warrior. I am the author of my story. And then the world will begin to change. Because the world changes not when circumstances change. The world changes when you change. And finally, I want you to hear these words as a vow. Live so that even your defeat inspires others. Love so that even your silence leaves a mark. Fight so that even your enemies recognize your strength. Because you are more than you think. You are a story still being written. And it is up to you whether it will be worthy of memory.